That's my goal, is that I'm going into it from the perspective of, if I'm a sales guy, a marketing person, somebody who's interested in strategy and growth and innovation, I'm looking for key takeaways from each book that I'm learning. What are maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 points that I can take away from each book that I can apply into my own business and see how that works?
From Toronto, PHANTA Media presents the Not So Corporate Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Not So Corporate Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Drager. I'm joined here in studio.
And I'm Leah.
That's Leah, as well
Kyle.
And Kyle. Okay, just carry on, guys. I don't need to be here. I'm just gonna go ahead and check my phone.
It's gonna be huge today.
It's gonna be super exciting podcast. We have a really special guest. Take it away, Mark.
Oh, you'd like me to host now? Oh, that's
We need
funny.
that air horn sound in here, like yeah.
Like that?
No, the one that they use in like dance music, club music.
Oh, like
It's like successive horn honkings.
Was that Indian music?
Not the Indian horn.
Or was that like a
shofar?
stampede race?
Anyway, guys, this is already off the rails. We're 1 minute in. Anyway, listen, we have a very special episode today. A very special episode. We have a special guest, Ryan Caligiuri, on the podcast. Ryan is he's a writer. He writes for the Globe and Mail here in Canada, which is one of our national newspapers. He is the podcast host of a podcast called Cut the Crap Podcast, where he is basically all over the neo-marketing strategist world. And sorry we're laughing, but we have a little bit of fun with that term a little bit later. We were able to connect with Ryan via Skype, and we're going to play that conversation in a minute. But before we do, just want to cover quickly what we go into. The reason why we had him on is he wrote this great article that we saw about working in different geographies. So, what if you're in a small market and you want to move to a big market? What if you're in a big market and you want to move to a bigger market? If you're in Canada and you think, oh, America's great. And if you're in America and you're like, oh, I want to be in Europe. And it's like the grass is always greener. And so we read this article. We're like, this guy's great. We want to get him on. But as we found out more about him, we realized, one, he's super into neo-marketing. Two, he's not only a writer for newspapers, but he hosts this podcast where he talks about business books. And I love business books, and we'll get into that in a bit. So just a heads up, the conversation, we're going to move around a lot because we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We had a lot of fun, and we've already recorded it. So this opening is happening out of order, little behind the scenes podcast stuff here. But one thing, we're going to be talking about a lot of books. And when we talk about the books, what's going on out the window?
Roland's doing something.
Roland did some running. It was entertaining.
Okay. So we're going to talk about a lot.
And I love business books.
Leah is
Ryan's
all over the business.
He's going to
books.
put Cole's Notes out of business if he keeps going.
Is Cole's Notes still in business?
I don't know. I've seen the Cole's bookstore still. Is it the same people?
Well, I don't think so, but I think Cole's is different than the Cole's Notes. But so just what they're referencing.
Cole's Notes has got to have a website.
Ryan's podcast, Cut the Crap Podcast, he basically reads business books and then talks about them so people like you and me don't have to read them. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, we're going to talk about a lot of books, and just for your reference, listen, if you're listening to this while you're driving or something, don't crash trying to write down the names of the books. We go to our episode page on our blog. Leah is going to list out every single book and the writer that we talk about through the podcast, and there are a lot of them. It's a doozy. So, without further ado, as Leah scripted for me, here's our conversation with Ryan Caligiuri. So, as I mentioned in the opening, we're joined with Ryan Caligiuri. So, Ryan, thanks so much for joining us for a talk today.
My pleasure.
I wanted to start off with the fact that in your bio it says you're a neo-marketing strategist. What the heck does that mean?
Good question. So I wasn't trying to go for being overly creative there, but I did want to get a message across that marketing really has shifted over the past whatever you want to call it, 20, 30 years, where marketing back in the day, marketing now, people associate that with advertising. And because advertising was so successful, people associate the sharing of a message is marketing. Well, that's not exactly true. Marketing is not just about the message you put out there to the marketplace. It's also about the product, the service, the offer that you put out there to the marketplace. So for anybody who's read Purple Cow by Seth Godin will understand the idea of creating something remarkable, a product that stands on its own and by itself is easily marketed. The problem is what we offer these days is a lot of commodities. And commodities, essentially, they're tougher to market, they're tougher to sell. And so that's why you get a lot of people doing this interruption-based marketing. So when I say neo-marketing, I mean that you need to do two things. Yes, you need to have a marketing strategy that we all know about. You need to have a promotion strategy. But what you also need to focus on is creating something that's an innovation in the marketplace. What's something that you can build that's the fastest, the cheapest, the hottest, the coldest, the safest, the most risky? I'd actually recommend people to pick up Seth Godin's book, Free Prize Inside, to come up with an innovation like that. He follows a system called Edgecraft, and Edgecraft is a great way for entrepreneurs, for businesses to really figure out a way that they can create an offer that pushes the boundaries, that really stands out from the status quo that's in the marketplace. So neo-marketing, the combination of both creating an innovation and marketing that innovation together is essentially what I'm looking at. But these days, marketers, they're all just about promotion.
Well, it's cool you mentioned a few books right off the bat. Spoiler alert, we're going to get heavy into the book side of things because you also run a podcast on that, as I mentioned in the opening. But, you came across our radar because you wrote an article on kind of local markets and the fact that depending on the type of market you're in and the local market and breaking into local markets or considering local markets is a real challenge that a lot of businesses don't, I think fully appreciate how hard it can be. I'm not going to go through and start quoting or kind of reading the article, but
sure.
But from your point of view, how let's dive into that topic a little bit if we can. How important is that for businesses to consider? You
really need to be prepared for that. Honestly, it's more difficult than people think. So the article that you're referring to, it was about I was saying that entrepreneurs need to give up trying to break into Toronto. And that's because over the years I've worked with a lot of individuals, from coast to coast and even some in the United States, and they have goals of breaking into the big epicenters. We got to get there. Once we get there, life is going to be so much better. Come on, really? I mean, you think it's going to be that much better? It's not. It's going to be harder. If you haven't mastered marketing, if you haven't mastered selling in your own backyard, why do you think it's going to become easier when you go somewhere where it's more competitive, where there's so much more noise, where there's so many more options? You're crazy if you think that. So any business out there, that's just a startup or $1 million company that wants to become, a $5 million company, I always encourage them to do more in the current vicinity that they're in. So let's just say that you're in Edmonton, and you have a business that, it's very specific. Let's just say, you do, you're a marketing agency, and you say, the marketing here, the people in the marketplace here, it's all tapped out. Is it tapped out, or is it that you're offering a commodity and that nobody wants it because everyone else is doing it? So again, neo-marketing comes back to that. What can you create that's different, that's unique in the eyes of the marketplace? How do you create that? Focus on bettering yourself first before trying to spread yourself out.
That's such an interesting point of view because growing up in Toronto and having it feel like a fairly small market for ourselves, I always got my eyes set on somewhere else too. So it's funny to think of and Toronto, for those who are in the States, it's essentially like Chicago, it's like New York. There are certain markets in the States where they're just much larger markets. So, from Toronto's point of view, we're always going like, I remember 3 or 4 years ago, we're like, we got to be in Montreal to capture the French. We have to be in Calgary because like from a video production point of view, it is almost half as cheap to fly us all of our gear and all of our crew to Calgary and produce than it is to hire local people. It is absurd, the market opportunity there. And so we're always looking outward and saying, we could pick up a little here and a little here and a little here, and you collect all those little bits together and you got yourself, an amazing source of revenue.
Right.
And then, I'm reminded by my friends where they go, are you doing everything you can do in your local market? Are you getting every piece of business you can get? Are you as good as you can be? Are you as strong as you can be? Have you tapped out your market? Because if you're telling me you've tapped out your market, and you're running a $1 or $2 or $3 or $4 million company, surely the marketplace within Toronto is larger than that. So why are you bringing on risk and introducing all kinds of operational challenges and lower profit margins and what have you to operate in multi-geographic area when you're not doing all you can do at home? And so it's interesting to hear your point of view looking towards Toronto as some, or the people you're talking to as some kind of golden paradise, when I'm just like, I'm busy looking at Edmonton and saying like, hey, how can we kill it in Edmonton, which is a much smaller market?
That's exactly right. And it's kind of become a big fish in your own pond before you start to go outwards. But the key takeaway there, though, and I don't want people to think that I'm against expansion. I'm not against expansion. Expansion is important for any business to grow. You need that. But what I'm saying is that a lot of companies look to expansion first to grow rather than looking at innovation at the core. You can only spread yourself out too thin, and going out there and going to Toronto, or if you're in Toronto you want to go to Chicago or New York. If you're in New York, I know a lot of people want to go out east. They want to go more international. You have to focus on developing something that's of value, and that's again comes back to what I say is neo marketing. How are you going to push the edges? How are you going to create something different? So from a video production standpoint, what can you do that's better than everybody else? And I say that, and it's so easy for me to say that, and it's way more difficult to actually carry that through and execute it. But that's where the hard work is, and that's where the profit is, and that's where the competitive advantage lies. And if you're able to figure that out, hell, it doesn't matter where you go. You'll be really successful in your own market, and you'll have clients in your own pocket there. They'll be very close, not in your own pocket, but they'll be really close by. And at that point in time, you can start to expand it. It's going to be so much easier for you to expand if you have something that's truly unique in the eyes of the marketplace.
All great points. So, in your experience, if we're able to blow this up from kind of our little bubble of, the center of the universe here in Toronto, or thinking out east or out west, if you just think about maybe, for a professional services firm or a creative firm, from a rural to urban, from an urban kind of small market to an urban really large market, if we blow this out to almost kind of anywhere USA, does it make sense to just slug it out and slug it out and slug it out and just have small budgets and small clients and small value? Or does it make a certain sense at a point to kind of take the leap and go where the money is?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's tough to say. It really is tough to say. It depends on where you're at as a business. It depends on whether or not you want to grow as a company, or if you are comfortable being a lifestyle business. And that's something that a lot of CEOs don't actually ever make a decision on. And there's a big jump from when you go from $1 million company, from under $1 million to $2 million company. When you go from $1 million company to $5 million, from 5 to 10 and 10 plus, there's big changes that happen in terms of the type of people that you have on staff, the type of overhead that you have to bring in, the types of investments you have to make. There are some really big changes. So, if you're comfortable, making a living, making the salary that you're making, you love taking your, 2 vacations a year, life's good, then maybe you don't want to make that jump to becoming, a service provider that works with a lot of large companies and expand yourself.
Just as you're talking, I have to say, I hate the idea of lifestyle businesses. Anybody who tells me that they're building a lifestyle business, I'm trying to be polite to, like, oh, wow, to each their own. No, that is BS to me. You cannot have I don't know. I don't understand how you can have a lifestyle business. Like, I'm making enough money to get by. I'm not growing. I'm not shrinking. I don't really care. I like the fact that I can make a bit of, income and travel because my true passion is travel. Then don't work. Then turn travel into work. But
there's a lot of folks out there, man. I'll tell you right now.
Yeah, but it kills me because you're not giving. There's no way that you're committing to your business. There's no way you're committing to your clients. Not. You're not working to be the best that you can be. When you're so hot and cold about something, when you're so kind of like toe in the water about it, it just means to me that you're not. It just irks me.
Yeah, no, I understand. But you know what? There's also people out there who the CEOs want that lifestyle business, which is fine. You know what? So here's the deal. There's guys out there who were the founders of their company. They started it for the lifestyle business. But what happened was, they realized, oh my God, there's so much work here that needs to be done. I need to bring in a president to take this over. I'm going to step out and I'm going to do some business development because that's what I love to do. I love to do business development and I love to bring in the big clients and I love to schmooze. I love to go golfing and I love to take them on my, on a vacation to Vegas or whatever over the weekend. There's a lot of CEOs that do that and they find a really good balance there where they bring in a president to run the company who's passionate about running the company and they're not so passionate about it. That's fine too. But like you said, I think, the reason why it irks you is because you're not really dedicating yourself to the people in the company, the marketplace, to advancing your position in the market. If that's you, you need to figure out whether or not, that's who you want to be in the future. If you need somebody to step in and become passionate about the business, because there's one thing that always happens with those people, their business always, falls into decline. If you look at the law of diffusion curve, startup, growth phase, maturity, cost cutting, decline. All those companies that have at the very helm a CEO that's all about the lifestyle, it goes down into decline. Why? Yeah. Because they're not focused on the future. They're not focused on innovation. They're not focused on understanding if their customers are happy, because honestly, they don't give a damn. They're focused more on themselves and their vacation and the cars they drive, the people they hang out with, where they're schmoozing, the country club they belong to. And I know I'm sort of making broad generalizations here, but I mean, it's a valid point.
I think that transitions nicely to the book talk, because I have a huge stack. I was telling you before we jumped on the thing. I have a stack of 2 books here, and so a bit of background. You host a podcast, Cut the Crap podcast, where essentially you read and then kind of Cole's notes the review of the books. Do you?
You got it. Yeah, that's exactly.
You're saving all of us. So the old line is like, the people you hang around with in the books you read is what defines a man or a woman. It's now just become like the podcast you listen to, so you don't have to read the book yourself.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's funny. The reason why I actually started up was I read a ton, and people in my network know that I read a lot. So one day I put it out on LinkedIn, and I told them, I said, hey, this new year, in 2016, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a book a week, and I'm going to stay dedicated to that. I said, keep me honest, guys.
Are you actually reading the book, or are you doing the whole, skim the book and then say that you read it?
Oh, God, no. You have to read the book. I've actually, because I've read so much, I've actually been pretty good at going through a book really, really quickly. But I am a note taker, man. I'll take a picture and I'll send it to you about one of the books that I recently read. And I think I had, those little pull tabs. I think I had about maybe 50 plus pull tabs, highlighters, notes, just pens and papers all over the place, because every book has core golden nuggets in it. And there's ones that are applicable to me. There's ones that aren't. And every single time I take away a book or I finish reading a book, I want to come out of that learning something. And I get really pissed off if I read a book and I only take away maybe one thing. So I'm like, why did I waste so much time? I mean, why did this thing ever even get published? So to bring it back, when I started reading the book, or when I started doing the book a week thing, one of my friends said, hey, you know what? You can maybe save me some time, because I don't really necessarily see myself reading that much. Can you send me a summary of the topics? I said, yeah, for sure. Why not? So what I do is when I read the book, I make notes. I actually create a mind map. I'll put the book title in the middle, and then I'll kind of just put out different thoughts or takeaways that I get from it. I'll make notes on it. And so I send it to him, and he goes, this is really helpful. He goes, thanks so much. And he goes, what's really helpful? He goes, can you actually maybe just create or no? He said, can you sit down with me and have a coffee? Let's talk about this book. So we talked about one of the books that I read. And he goes, you got to create a podcast, man. I said, I just don't have the time to do it. And he's like, think about it. So I sat down and thought about it. I'm like, you know what? It's actually not going to take me that long. Like, I'm going to sit down for maybe half an hour and talk about it. I'm like, it's not going to be long at all. So I started it off and put a few out there. And I'm not a podcasting veteran, but I'm going to put it out there. And honestly, it has surprised me at how many people actually subscribe to the podcast and are downloading. I mean, I'm on episode 9 right now, and I've already got to about 6,000 downloads per episode.
That's awesome.
And it blows me away, man. And honestly, I think the Globe Mail helps in that as well. The network there. I mean, that definitely helps for sure. But, it surprised me quite a bit in terms of the amount of people who bought into it and are listening to it. So I hope that people, subscribe to it and they listen, and it helps them, sort of get in their book a week if they don't have time to read.
Okay, I quickly have some questions about the logistics of this.
You bet.
I'm curious too.
Yeah, only because I love to read, but I couldn't read a book a week. I mean, maybe my life doesn't allow it, but have you taken speed reading courses?
You know what? I haven't taken speed reading courses. I've read books on speed reading in terms of how to read, and I don't like it.
No.
I speed read and I don't get what I'm supposed to get from the book. The best way to do it, honestly,
or enjoy the book, right?
Yeah,
these are business books, so it's not like
it's
not like you're enjoying them. They're a bit of a trip.
I don't know. Ryan, what do you think? My husband really only reads business books, and he really enjoys them. The way I enjoy,
Yeah, but it's
Summer
not like
Sisters.
it's not like a Summer Sisters. I don't know what that is, but
It's a really good book.
It's not like a whodunit or anything, right?
Okay.
I love business books, though. Honestly, I mean, especially if you are like, I'm in marketing. That's what I do for a living. So I love reading marketing books. I love to see what thought leaders in the space are thinking, they're doing. I love to try out new things and apply them to our own business. And to me, that's kind of one of the biggest things that I love getting out of it. It's just self-improvement. I actually don't read a lot of fiction, let alone any. It's all nonfiction business books for myself. And the key to just getting through a book a week is just discipline. Like, I don't watch TV, and I'm not I'm not one of those people who say, oh, TV's bad. TV's great, man. I watch, Netflix, every once in a while with the wife, and we sit down and relax. But honestly, you make time for working out, just like you make time to eat right, you make time to read. And for me, I set aside 4 hours every single day to read, and I read before I go to bed. So
4 hours.
I'll get in bed at about 11 o'clock, and I'll read probably about 2 to 3 o'clock. And that's everything from a
Oh, so you do it at night? Like you just burn through 4 hours in
I'm
one
a
chunk?
night owl, and people, you ask anybody, any of my friends, they will say I'm a robot, and I don't know how I do it. I get 4 hours of sleep, and I'm good to go.
Well,
What?
Some people can do that. It's like
sleep. I know. Ask anybody. I'm
biology.
going on vacation next week to Cuba, and everyone always says, whenever they go on vacation with me, it's not a vacation because we'll stay up till maybe 3 and I'm up at 7. They're like, can we get a sleep, like just a little bit of sleep? I'm like, nah, waste the day. Let's go. And I don't know. I am a little bit of a robot.
That's awesome.
I like work on a solid 11 hours. Sleep is what I like
Yeah,
to
but
do.
you're making life, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I'm also pregnant, but the 11 hours has been my typical lately.
you do you. Whatever works for you. What works for you.
That's amazing, though. So discipline, 4 hours every day. You don't ever miss it, and
Okay, but like he's crazy. Okay, so like no
I'm
offense.
not-
I could do
not-
maybe 2.
I'm
but
not
that would
saying
be
I'm
No-
going to
no
pick
offense
this up. I'm
or
just
anything,
saying that
but-
that's your tactic. And then did you start in January?
I started in January. Yeah.
That's so
and you've
awesome.
done it so
Yeah,
far.
but hold on. I think I may be reading between the lines, but you're saying you're going back and rereading books you've already read?
Yeah, so I've gone back and reread some of the big books. So, for example, like I just reread Good to Great. I've read that one. This would be my 3rd time reading it.
I tell
So that
people
was-
I've read
was-
that. That's a great book that I tell people I've read. But
Yeah, so
really, I
that's-
skimmed it.
Oh,
It's,
know what, though?
Listen, you get what is it? The groundhog or hedgehog theory? You need the
concept,
hedgehog
yeah.
concept. You
Yeah.
need to know most of it, and I
so you
read
can
it
discuss it in
11
social
years
situations?
ago, and yeah.
You know what's funny? I was saying this in the podcast, and I don't want to say that I hate the book, but my biggest beef with the book is that it's just everything in there is so common sense. And the hedgehog concept, it's the one thing that CEOs clamor around. It's, we got to find our hedgehog, and we have to have a hedgehog meeting. Shut up. Every strategy consultant out there will tell you, you need to have a focus. You need to know where you're going, what are you going to be passionate about, what can you be the best in the world at, and what are the economic indicators that are going to help you understand if you're successful or not. He just wrapped Jim Collins, no offense to Jim Collins, a great guy, but he just wrapped it in something that was really attractive, and he made a story about it, the fox and the hedgehog. And that's what made it compelling. That's why people understood it. It's no different from having a strategy in business. You guys have a hedgehog concept with this podcast. Most people out there who are creating videos perhaps have a hedgehog concept. We're going to be, the best in the world at creating videos for XYZ. And if they don't, maybe they just need a strategy. You don't need a hedgehog concept. Go find a strategy consultant. They'll develop a strategy for you. Boom, you have your hedgehog.
Well, we're gonna blast through some books that I think will do that too. But at the end of the day, like I have a friend who's writing a book. His concept is original and it's unique. But it's fantastic, and it also helps that I think I'm in the book because I'm being profiled. So it's just a fantastic book all around. Let's say that, and it's being published in the States, and he has an agent and all that stuff. It's all great. But at the end of the day, it comes down to core selling. He talks about core selling. He talks about having a purpose. He talks about living that purpose. And a lot of people are speaking and preaching a very similar thing. And then it's just the it's like religion, right? All religion talks about a higher power, and then it's just kind of the flavor that you think is most appropriate to you within any given kind of religion. So anyway, that was a bit of a step away, but if I can preface our future book conversation, the conversation we're about to have with one confession that I've shared with listeners in the past. I have a book buying addiction. I love buying business books because I imagine myself reading them. I can visualize I'm going to read them. I love the concept. I'm going to take away so much. Like, this book is going to change my life. I cannot wait to read it. And so I'll buy books like 3, 4, 6 at a time. And then I never read them. Like,
they look good on the bookshelf, though, man. They look good on the bookshelf.
Oh, they look so good. So I actually have 2 stacks in front of me. One are books that I have kind of read or really read and learned something from. And then I have another stack of books that I want to get to.
Look like they've never been touched.
I want to get to
pristine.
or
Yeah.
or at least tell people that I've read. But before we get into that, now that I've confessed that I tell people I've read books that I've kind of not really read but have experience with, going through your list, let's hit on a few that I think are really
cool.
amazing. So obviously Purple Cow, Seth Godin, I think 2003, 2002 it came out ish. I don't know the exact date, but really revolutionary. Haven't read it, but I listened to a keynote speaker talk about it. So I feel like I got the gist out of it back in 2005. Walk me through, for the audience, because it is an older book, but the principles are still great. Can you walk me through just a few key takeaways from it?
You betcha. So you're driving through, let's just say you're driving through Nebraska. You see nothing but, wheat and prairies, and a whole bunch of cows come up. And you got brown cows, black and white cows, and nothing stands out. And all of a sudden you see a purple cow and you say, oh my God, that thing stands out. You're going to pull over. You're going to take pictures. You're going to send that to your friends. And all of a sudden it's like, my God, you'll never see a purple cow again. It's awesome. That's what Seth Godin's trying to do with businesses. And that comes back to innovation. Build your purple cow. Every company out there, everybody who's making videos, they're all brown cows. They're all doing the same thing. We all make videos, and there's really no difference between us and everyone else. There's no purple cow there. So the whole idea behind the book is, how do you create a purple cow in your organization? How do you do something more remarkable than everybody else? And as I say that, it's just, it's on the surface, it's very easy to ask that question. But again, it's how do you do that? And he brings in different concepts from a previous book he wrote on edgecraft and how you can push the boundaries. And he gives a lot of great examples on companies that did do that.
Now, one of the things that I recall from the talk, and this may be in the book or may not, but he talked about the fact that when it comes to clients, it's not enough just to have happy clients. You need like a cult following. You need ecstatic, amazing clients who are like, bananas over you. Yeah,
you need raving fans. It's another book.
That's the term.
Yeah, raving fans, or in one of his books, he actually named it a tribe, and he says that for anything to take over, to spread wide, you need to have 1,000 people in your tribe. And that was another book by Seth Godin. More recently, I think he released that one maybe about 5 years ago.
All books that I'm going to buy and not read. I've got them on my list.
But it'll look good on the bookshelf, though, man. So yeah, that's exactly it. And once you get those early adopters, those innovators buying into your purple cow, then those folks can take it to the mainstream, and they'll spread that message far and wide. But you got to find those people who will be passionate and take the risk with you. So, for example, if you are trying something different in video, chances are your big government clients, your big enterprise clients might not be the ones to buy into it, because those guys are usually your late adopters. Find the smaller companies that are willing to take a risk and want to try something new. Those are the folks that you want to sell your purple cow to. Those will be the guys that will buy into things a lot more readily than the bigger guys.
So can I talk about quickly episode 6? You covered a book. Before I started my firm 10 years ago, I worked in a franchise system and company. We did a video-based multi-day lunch and learn series on this book. So again, I haven't read the book, but I feel like I've gone through the video, and this is like the oldest school book. Like I can't even imagine that this even applies to business today because it's so old. But the book is Who Moved My Cheese? Like, is this something that's still relevant today? I can't believe it.
It's really funny. Who Moved My Cheese is still relevant today because we're humans.
Leah's giving me a look. Do you know Who Moved My Cheese?
No.
It's all about mice who get used to the systems of where cheese come, and they get fed all the time, and then someone moves it. And I believe, if I can recall back 12 years now, one of the mice, the really smart, industrious mouse survives. The other one, who's just like, it's the way we've always done it, dies a painful death.
Wait, because he can't find the cheese?
That's my memory of it, and I may have embellished it a bit. But yeah, it's the idea is that that's the way we've always done it. It kills you. Systems, processes, doing things the same all the time. And then eventually...
I think the difference there, though, is that what happens there... The reason why I like that is because it's still relevant today. And because, I've had a lot of experiences talking with a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of companies, and one of the big takeaways there that you have to get from Who Moved My Cheese is that, him and Ha, those two people in the maze who are, they're sitting there, they're enjoying their cheese, they're loving their cheese, and all of a sudden the cheese starts to disappear, but they kind of ignore it, and then all of a sudden it's gone. They're like, oh my God, we need to come up with a big strategy and a big plan, and they spend all this time making this plan, making the strategy, and it doesn't work, and they're like, oh God, we need a new plan. And people over-plan these days. There's too much planning and not enough action. While the other mice, those guys just went out and they started doing. So I'm not a fan of just either or, of over-planning or making no plan. There's a balance in the middle where you have to have a plan. And the takeaways from Who Moved My Cheese are still very, very relevant today because people are still making those freaking mistakes today. It's unbelievable.
That's like
that's why it's still relevant.
Canadian businesses.
But when was the book written? Like in the late 80s? I'm going to look it up.
Probably the 80s. Yeah, look it up. But it was written a long time ago. And they sold millions of copies all around the world. And despite the fact that there's millions of copies around the world, companies make these mistakes all the time. And I can guarantee you, hey, you know what? I'm not perfect. I make this mistake all the time as well, too. Sometimes I spend a little bit too much time, looking at the analytics and developing plans in place. And I have to check myself and say, okay, enough of the planning. Let's go ahead and let's just get to it. And
we were totally off on the date.
By 20 years?
By 10. It's 1998. I can't believe the book is that new.
Wow.
I can't believe it. Originally published September 8th, 98. Anyway, another one, as long as we're going on this little anecdotal trip of mine, spin selling. I worked for a person who was a master of spin selling. So this is the book that I literally have never actually read, but I've witnessed someone who just lived by the principles of it. I've done a lot of research and I see a lot of values in it. And as soon as people ask about selling or about overcoming objections, in a sales process, or about just how to turn, how to position things, I always say, well, maybe go read this book, even though I haven't read it. Yeah. What's, again, an older principle, an older book, still relevant today?
Absolutely. It's one of those things where I think this is great for people coming into a new sales role. So a lot of people that are fresh out of school, there's a strategy out there that a lot of companies like to hire young because they're cheaper. They don't command, a higher salary. So you bring in somebody, you pay them a smaller salary, and it's their job to grow the company. They're a business development person. They have to grow the company. You might get somebody who, is just, they're not that great with business development. Spin selling gives you a really simple approach to how to sell. It's a very simple framework. Spin, S-P-I-N, it's, it's all based on different questions that you ask. So you have situation questions, problem questions, implication questions, and need payoff questions. So you have those 4 types of questions, and in the book, they go through what those questions are, when you should ask them, and how you move a prospect through asking those questions to get to the close. It's a great framework. It's old, but it's still relevant today because there's a lot of people who just need to know how to sell. And I think it's going to continue to be relevant these days because, hey, we're all selling. And so there's nothing wrong with figuring out what kind of questions work and which kind of questions are most effective at getting a particular result.
And so what are you reading now?
Right now, I am reading Rework. And,
that's on my desk. That's Jason Friedman and David Heinemeier Hassan.
You got it. Yeah, the founders of Basecamp. So they just have a really good story overall. And that was a book that's been on my bookshelf. I have a big bookshelf, and I have a ton of books just like you. I'm not ashamed to say that I just haven't read. I bought them, and I was going to get to it, and I haven't read them. So Rework has been on my shelf for a long time, and I have not read it.
It's an older book, and it's essentially like a more like chat book where it's a collection of their blog posts they decided to publish.
You betcha.
And I think it was like the number one marketing activity they could have done because it really, really, really helped their business, and super easy read. It gets you thinking, I guess, but it's like the pages are a bit throwaway in my opinion.
Interesting. Yeah, it's funny. That's the one thing that you'll learn as you read a lot of business books is that and anyone will tell you this, there's usually 3 or 4 core concepts from each book, and the rest of it just overly explains it, drags it out for as long as they possibly could because, hey, you got to hit 250, 300 pages. You can't just put out a book that's, 25, 30, 40, 50 pages. There's some people that do that, but they're going to be a lot cheaper. So, hey, you got to make margin on your book. So stretch that concept out, baby, But, like any other book, there's always good takeaways. And, that's my goal is that I'm going into it from the perspective of If I'm a sales guy, a marketing person, somebody who's interested in strategy and growth and innovation, I'm looking for key takeaways from each book that I'm learning. What are maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 points that I can take away from each book that I can apply into my own business and see how that works? So sorry, man, I don't want to interrupt you there, but so one of the things I wanted to get across the podcast, which I'm building right now, which is really cool, is very similar to what you guys are doing. Interviews. So what I'm doing is I'm going out there to CEOs of different organizations and I'm asking them, what book did you find was influential in the development of your business? And if they don't have a book, they don't have a book. That's cool. Then we're done. If they have a book and they say, oh man, this book was really helpful for us, then what I would do is then I would then read that book. I'm going to talk about the golden nuggets on that, and then I'll feature them in an interview and ask them how they use particular pieces from that book to run different aspects of their business. So again, it's to make it real. Take knowledge, but demonstrate how you were able to apply that in your business to teach us something.
That's a great idea. Leah, note that down for us. I'm joking. But
all good, man, all good.
That's a great idea. So two things though, while we were talking just quickly about the rework style of book, and then you mentioned about people stretching it out. Number one most influential book personally for me and for our business in probably the last 2 years I read was Start With Why.
The only business book I've ever read.
By Simon Sinek or Sinek, depending on how you want to say his name. I should probably learn it, but and that is totally a book where he took a very great principle. He probably took a 20-page summary and he stretched it out to 230 pages.
So
With
terrible.
the same companies.
And it's just
over
like,
and over.
But the thing is, like I tell people, I make clients read it. I say you have to read this.
Everyone that works here, you forced us.
I forced everyone in the company and we had meetings on it. But the thing is, I'm like, you have to read the whole thing. About 10 pages in, you're going to be like, I get it. 90 pages in, you're going to be like, I really get it. But there are these little nuggets along the way, and you never know when they're going to happen. But he takes the same principle and just hits it over and over again. But that's such a huge book. And then talking about the chat book style book, this is a book that I don't think you'll heard of. I don't think anyone has ever heard of. And I got introduced to it probably about a decade ago. And it's called The Wizard of Ads by Roy H. Williams. And he's self-published. So basically it's this old school marketing guy, advertising guy, who started a fax machine blog. He would write a weekly blog and then fax it to people. And then when the internet came around and went online, and then people are like, "Oh, this is really interesting." And this guy's a total storyteller. Each page is just one post. And I used to buy it and give it to people. It's just such an amazing book that talks about life and storytelling and all kinds of things. And you can only buy them through his website. It's called The Wizard of Ads. And the book starts off with the principle that the risk, the price of clarity is the risk of offense. And I remember that sticking with me because it's like from a communications and marketing point of view, if you want to be clear, if you want to be specific, if you want to be direct to certain people, you have to risk offending other people. And it's just like, anyway, an amazing principle for me and something that stuck with me. And I would suggest if you can get a hands on a copy yourself, give it a read.
Absolutely. Very cool. I'm just looking it up right now as you were talking. Seems interesting. Yeah. Definitely going to give that a shot.
Awesome. So that's a cool idea in terms of the business owners and the books that influences them. As a marketer, aside from the books you've highlighted and the things that you're reading now, what's left the most lasting impression on you?
You know what? It's got to be The Ultimate Sales Machine. And I featured that one, I think, maybe episode 3 in Cut the Crap podcast.
By Chet Holmes.
Yeah, and the reason for that is just because I was mentored by Chet. And I think for sure that really just taught me a lot about how much persistence truly, truly matters. Here's an example for you. A lot of the times people, when they're trying to get into those big time companies like Rogers, for example, you're trying to get into Rogers, you want to talk to the CEO, you want to talk to the head of strategy or the head of marketing, whoever it is, the head of innovation. And you got to have a plan in place. You got to do this and this and this, and everything has to work together. Well, that's not always necessarily true. I mean, you can have a plan in place, but unless you lack what Chet coins pig-headed determination, you can have the best plan in the world, but it's not going to work unless you persist. And that was something that Chet told me about. And the reason why he actually started to mentor me was because he said I demonstrated to him pig-headed determination. And I didn't know what that was at the time, but I sent him about 67 different messages, phone calls, emails, direct mailers. I actually sent him a coconut in the mail that said, Chet, you're one tough nut to crack. Give me a call back. And he laughed and he called me back and he said, Ryan, he goes, I respect your persistence. And he goes, it's the kind of thing I'm looking at. He goes, so let's go through this mentorship. And so to bring it back, if you're trying to break into Rogers, for example, I was trying to get in touch with Guy Laurence, and I figured, you know what, I'm just going to be more persistent, and I was persistent, got in touch with Guy, and he says, you know, Ryan, he goes, I appreciate your persistence. He goes, thank you so much. He goes, I'm just really busy. He goes, let's sit down and talk. He goes, let's set aside half an hour. And people sit there and they say, God, Ryan, how are you able to get into all these large CEOs and talk to them? You know, is it the Globe and Mail? Does it help you? No, it's not. I don't go in there under the guise of the Globe and Mail. I just go under there as Ryan Caligiuri. But it's because I'm more persistent and I'm delivering value at every single step of the way. I'm not just like, call me back, call me back, call me back, call me back. And so that's why Ultimate Sales Machine to me was the most influential. It taught me about persistence. It taught me about being strategic and not tactical. It taught me about how to deliver value. It taught me how to leverage creativity in the prospecting process. And just being able to work with Chet as well too, to see a lot of those philosophies come into practice was a really it was a game changer for me.
Does that persistence ever backfire or not work out? I mean, I know for myself. Yeah, like I guess do you have those sort of cutoff points in place in your mind when you're going through that process?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the things, again, it's, in the sales process, you have to have, your answers to all your objections, Right. So if someone says, you know what, I'm not interested, what's your response to that? You have to have an interesting response that keeps them engaged. But you know what, though? I've been really persistent with somebody before, and they said, listen, man, you got to back off. I'm not interested. So you know what, man? That's cool. Absolutely. It's not right for you. And but, it's really funny. Those people that got really mad at me, I worked with them. And I got them as clients afterwards, because here's the thing. If people in business, they don't want to annoy people. I don't want to annoy people. Listen, if you have a cure for arthritis, are you not going to go out there to every person that you know and try to get them to use your product because you know it's going to help them? How much do you truly believe in your ability to help their business? If you believe your product works and can make their life easier, then it's your obligation to put it in front of them so that they don't make a wrong decision. And if you come at it from that perspective, you don't think about yourself as a snake oil salesman or selling used cars or just being an annoyance to them. No, you're actually doing them a favor. And while that might come off sounding cocky, it comes off sounding cocky if you believe that you can sell anything. No, I need to truly believe that what I have to offer is the best option for them, which brings this back full circle to neo-marketing. Don't just bring them a commodity that anybody else can sell them. Give them something that is truly unique that only you can deliver to them. And that's why neo-marketing is so important these days.
You should have, I mean this with love, you should have warned us that you're going to mention neo-marketing so much time. We would have started a drinking game early on.
No kidding, man.
It's a hot topic.
We would be on like our 6th shot by now.
That's how we podcast. We just do shots.
No.
It's been rough since I got pregnant.
Yeah, we had to cut back on the LCBO stuff since Leah started caring about what happened around here. But very cool. Have you read Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I read that one a long time ago. Yeah, I read that one back in high school, actually. I don't even remember a lot of the key takeaways from that one.
I just remember smile. There's a whole chapter on smiling. It's something I recommend to people. I had a friend last week who actually said, like, hey, I'm trying to work through some, interpersonal office stuff, some conflict management stuff. Can you suggest a book? And I was like, no, I mean, I couldn't. But the one thing that came to mind to me is How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's from like 1932. It's still as valid today as it's ever been. And it's something that I try to make all of my staff read. We have something like 4 or 5 copies here at the office. I want everyone to read it. I want everyone to be reminded of it, because the 2 principles that lasted with me is remember to just smile sometimes. And the other thing is, which is huge for my personality type, is you cannot expect others who have not had your experiences or your knowledge or walked through your shoes, you cannot put your expectations on them. You can't expect them to operate at your level. You can't expect them to know what you're thinking. You just cannot project your expectations based off of who you are on others. And it's just like so valid today.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good takeaways from there. The one thing that I always remember from that one was talking in terms of the other person's interests. So it's always that whole thing, we FM, right? What's in it for me? And that from a sales, from a marketing perspective is super important, because you go to most people's websites and it's all about me, 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 me. No, talk about their interests. Talk about what they want to do. Talk about them getting more clients, So, for example, we're helping people create videos. Well, we create videos, we do this animation, we do this. Okay, well, cool. But talk about in terms of what it's going to give to them. So, what will a video do for them? Will it help them attract business? Will it help them break into new markets easier? Will it help them tell a more comprehensive story? Talk in terms of their interests. I mean, there's there's actually a lot of good takeaways. And because you brought it up, I have to read it again because I don't remember all the points from that. I just remember bits and pieces. So I'm going to be reading that probably in the next couple of weeks.
Do you want me just to give you a list of things you should read?
No.
Send me the email, man. I'll get to it.
Power of Habit is great. Leaders Eat Last is great. Contagious by Jonah Berger is actually a fun read. It has, it's not really a principal point of view, but a fun read. There's lots of good stuff out there.
No kidding. Yeah, I'll definitely pick up some of those there. I'll definitely read those.
Delivering Happiness. Have you read Delivery Happiness? The Zappos story by Tony
Shea's book.
Yes.
Yeah, again, one of those books I have on the bookshelf. Haven't read it yet.
Oh, it's a great book. It's a great book. I towards the end they talk about their Vegas operation that they set up, and I was going to Vegas with someone from my company, and I was like, we should do a tour. And then the flight got messed up or something happened, and we missed our tour time. But they're so about culture that they even let people come in and just hang out at their offices to kind of preach about how awesome culture could be.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So how do you generally choose books? Do you just get recommendations all the time from people?
Yeah, randomly, So as I started off, I started reading books that I know a lot of people in my network have read and rant and rave about. And, honestly, it's just sometimes somebody will be like, for example, this interview right here where we're just chatting. It's just, I read this book. Cool, I'm going to read it. I'm going to pick it up. And there's no rhyme or reason to it. I'll just go to the bookshelf one day, like how I started off. I'll just go to the bookshelf and pick one out and start reading. And as I continue this process, it's just going to be random. There's no rhyme or reason to it. There's so many books out there. If somebody asks me to do one, I'll do one, but it's pretty random.
Okay, so now that I'm a subscriber to your podcast, I mentioned I had
appreciate that, by the way.
I had 2 stacks of books. The ones I've been talking about so far are the ones I love and I've read. I got the stack of books that I haven't read yet. Can you go ahead and profile each of them so that way I can just say that I've read them? So I'll start at the bottom real quick. Okay, ready? Resilience, Checklist Manifesto, The 4 Disciplines of Execution, Uncertainty, Essentialism, Creativity Inc., Made to Stick, and Switch.
Maybe just take a screen.
Yeah, I'll take a photo of them. If you can go ahead and work through them for me, then that would be great.
Done deal, brother. I got you covered. Don't worry about it.
Have you read any of those? Did any of them jump out at you?
Yeah, Switch and Essentialism. Those are 2 good books. I actually really liked Essentialism. It's one of those books where it helps you focus on the core things that are going to help move you forward in your business, in your life. What are those core things that are going to make you really great? And I follow Essentialism to a T myself. And it comes down to self-discipline. You have to be disciplined. And, cutting out, it's less about what you do as it is about what you cut out of your life and what you don't do. So for myself, I cut out a lot of things that aren't needed, like TV. I cut it out. I work out. I eat right. I read. I go to work. I socialize with friends. But it's all. I'm the project manager of my life, and I make sure that things are running smoothly. And Essentialism was a big part of that. There's a lot of really good takeaways, a lot of good strategies from that, and it's definitely going to be one of those books that I'm going to cover probably in the next month or so.
Are you a Gen Y or a Gen X?
I'm a Gen X.
You are. You sound like a Gen Y. You sound too fulfilled to be a Gen Xer.
Positive.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just a happy-go-lucky guy. I got most
I do feel like when I was listening to him, and I could be wrong, but I do feel like he's like describing a lifestyle that seems so like clean and simple. And I think, Kyle, you have more of a similar lifestyle to that. I think it all goes
Not
down.
all the time.
I think that it all goes out the window once you have children, and that's why you and I are like.
Ryan, you got kids?
No, don't have kids.
No, did you hear how clean his lifestyle and amazing? You can't have kids without bubble guppies.
You could have one kid if you're a Gen X.
True.
I blame it all on the generation.
I have a dog, and that's good enough for me, man. That's good enough for me.
So is the Cut the Crap podcast exclusively focused on these specific types of business books, like the ones that offer advice, or are you thinking of expanding the scope of it?
Great question. Yeah, I haven't really thought too much about it. I mean, honestly, I sort of started the podcast very, haphazardly. It was just, I'm going to start sharing these things with the people that want to listen. And if people want to listen, then great. And so I just figured I'd start reading books. But for me, now that I have the podcast out and I know that people like it and people are learning from it, I'm going to take suggestions from people in terms of, what kind of books you like, what kind of books people don't like. But hey, things are working out pretty good right now. So any type of book that offers a piece of advice to people in terms of how to do their job better, those are probably the targets that I'm looking at right now.
Can I recommend that collectively, and you can disagree with me, but collectively, can we go ahead and just stop recommending that people read E-Myth?
Oh, God.
I think that I get so...
You have to be online? Is that it?
The E-Myth, the entrepreneur myth. And, it's all about processes and stuff, but people read it in startup. Like, I read it before I started, and you read it in startup, and you go, this is the business I need to build. And the E-Myth is meant for businesses who are, like, already operating, already 10 years old, already have staff and have a mess and lack operations. And it's just people. I've had people on our YouTube who listen to what I'm saying and go, I don't know if you know, but you completely contradicted the E-Myth. And I'm like, did I? I guess so. But just please, guys, stop reading it.
So somebody should write a book that's just, it's only awful experiences and anecdotes. Like, there's nothing positive in it, but it's like, this is what an entrepreneur is.
No, it's not that. It's just, it's an okay book. It's just, I think it's overrated. I don't know if you agree, Ryan.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So, I mean, nothing against Michael Gerber. He's a great author.
I have stuff against him, but I paid a lot of money to go to a conference, and he was the keynote speaker. And maybe it was the weather, maybe it was him.
The clip art.
I know he's a person. I know he's a real person. I don't want to tear him down, but like over the course of his talk, half of the audience walked out.
Oh, wow.
And I waited and he started yelling at them. He started saying, "Where are you going?" And people were just like, "I'm not sticking around for this." We paid a lot of money to hear him speak, and it was just really confusing. So,
crazy. Wow. No
yeah.
kidding.
So I mean, he seemed like a nice guy, I guess, when he wasn't yelling at the audience. But talk about a lasting impression.
Just the raw truth on Michael Gerber here.
There you go. That's my personal opinion, and this is all not proven in a court of law.
Kyle, don't you? I was going to ask you before. Maybe this is putting you on the spot, but you have an interest in business. What business books have influenced you? And
None.
Kyle listens to an iPod. Do you listen to books? Don't you?
Not that many.
No?
I've found that I'm not very good at it. I'm not an auditory learner. So I tried it and it didn't really work.
Me neither. And don't you find you're like, wow, this has been on for an hour and I've thought about so much stuff.
Yeah, basically.
That is funny though, because I can listen to podcasts and stay in with them. But as soon as it's an audiobook, it's like, I'm busy thinking about like dirt biking or something.
Yeah.
I've listened to The Great Gatsby a bunch of times. I don't know why, but
I have that in my list to read.
Do you want the audiobook? I have it in my car.
I have a different approach. I just read books about business people, I guess, or interesting people.
Okay, so that's kind of more what I said. What I meant. I know that you read a lot of nonfiction.
No, but we're not going off on that trail. Thank you, Leah. But no, when you're saying business books, you mean more like memoirs or even written about things. Like I loved
from the first person.
I loved Insanely Simple by Ken Siegel.
It's someone's story.
Siegel, whatever. But he's the he's the marketer who worked really closely with Steve Jobs through all of the big campaigns.
Yeah,
his book was really, really interesting to me. Is that what you mean, Kyle?
That's pretty much it. Like, it doesn't need to be that obvious. It could just be, well, I guess that's a memoir, isn't it? Pretty much.
I guess so.
Where you can kind of take your own
perspective
exactly.
Times.
You don't need it kind of like
maybe we need more of that in business books. What do you think, Ryan?
Get some different perspectives, man. Different stimulus, diversity. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a big fan. I mean, one of those books that I picked up, and I'm going to read. I haven't read it yet, but Elon Musk's book. I mean, the guy's everywhere really in the media these days. He's just doing such remarkable things. Remarkable man. And the fact that he's like 43, 44 years old, and he's done so much already. It's remarkable. Or even guys who wrote Rework, for example. Like Jason Fried. I mean, these guys are younger guys, and they've done so much. I mean, everything from Ruby on Rails to Basecamp to a number of other things. I mean, it's great to get inside some of these individuals' heads to figure out, what makes them tick, to better understand them, their behaviors, and what made them great.
Yeah, I just forgot his name. Virgin.
Yeah. Virgin Airlines? Come on.
Yeah, Virgin Mobile, Virgin Airlines, Virgin.
Richard Branson.
Richard Branson. Okay, so like with Richard Branson, like he's one of my favorite entrepreneur personalities. Love his style, love his sense, love his key takeaways. I bought a bunch of his books. Yeah. And I think Kyle, the thing with someone who has a memoir type book, you kind of run out of things to talk about. You can only tell so many stories. You can only position things so many times. And if you're going to be a professional writer, or maybe Richard Branson has ghostwriters at this point, but if you have someone writing stuff for you, it has to be kind of like based off of like a more of a theory or an essay you're trying to prove, and you can't just keep talking about the same people in the same life. I think you're going to burn through your experiences too quick. Because I found Richard Branson's books are a little bit hit and miss.
Well, I'll only read one book by a person, though, and I'll move on to another person.
Okay, so someone like him, though, where he has like 12 books or something, or however many he has, how are you going to pick which one you're going to read? Like Screw Business as Usual. I'm like, this book looks awesome, and I start reading it, and I realized that it was like very 2009. He was talking about purpose. Everybody's talking about purpose now. He's talking about the environment. I'm like, yeah, the environment.
I might just read an overall one, like how did he get to where he is now?
Oh, okay.
That would be my approach, probably. Just trying to find out if that Ryan
Have you read anything by Branson there?
I haven't. No, I've never read anything by Branson before, but no, now that you're talking to me about it, I don't think I ever will, though. I mean, I don't know if there's anything interesting there. I mean, I read a lot of articles from him on his, Inc. and Fast Company, and
that's the thing. Like his article, like I've had more impactful moments from his articles than his books. But again, let's preface that by the fact I bought a bunch of books and haven't read them all yet. So I'm sure there's great little hidden gems in there. Okay, so just last question before we got to let you go. Number one book you recommend if people are new to this whole reading thing, or business, let's say, what's the one book they just have to read?
Oh, you know what? I got to go with the one that I believe is my number one. It's The Ultimate Sales Machine. I truly believe that you can have all the strategies in the world, but if you don't have persistence, you're not going to be successful. And I think he matches persistence with some creativity and how to be persistent and what it looks like to be persistent. Anybody who's getting into business, who wants to make something work, who's bringing a new product to market, doesn't matter what it is. If you don't have persistence, you're not going to be successful. You need to have that core key. And I think The Ultimate Sales Machine gives that overall holistic approach to, how to do that efficiently.
I am adding that to my Amazon cart today, and I will buy it and not read it right away. Right away.
I'll call you in 2 years and see if you've read it.
So that was our conversation with Ryan Caligiuri. If you'd like to reach out to Ryan, you can find him on Twitter at Ryan Caligiuri. And Caligiuri is spelled not at all how you think, Caligiuri. Listen, but before we end off, as I mentioned a few times, I have these 2 stacks of books, and I didn't get a chance to, it just didn't seem natural for me to just have Ryan on the line and then start talking about books I like. So I did have a few thoughts, and Leah and Kyle, you can jump in at any point here if I'm boring you, if you think I'm going on too much. But, just for our regular listeners, there are certain books that I've read that really, really, really struck me and helped me along the way at different points in my career. And one of them we already talked about. So if you're early on, if you're just starting in business or just starting outside of school, you got to take a look at How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's a really simple read. It's might seem basic to you, but within each of the principles, there's just really, really great stuff in there. Like, as I mentioned, how to smile and how not to project yourself onto other people. And there are other things in here like, how to deal with people. Like one of the chapters early on is, if you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Like just if you want things to happen, running in there like a mad fool and getting angry at everyone isn't really going to help you. And so just a great book. If you're early on starting out, you got to take a look at How to Win Friends and Influence People. Do not not watch the movie that is based on that, because how to lose friends and alienate people. It's a comedy and it's satirical and has nothing to do with the book. Oh. So just go ahead and read the book. Now, if you're a little bit further along, let's say you're 1 year into startup or 2 years into startup and you're struggling, this book, I believe it still applies, but probably about 8 or 9 years ago, when my business was like on the verge of going bankrupt during the recession, this book really, really helped me a lot. And it's called The 9 Lies That Are Holding Your Business Back and the Truth That Will Set You Free by Chandler and Beckford. I think it's still in print, but it's a really small book. But there are principles and there are things in there where if you're early on, if you're in the startup phase and you're struggling with business, there are things in this book that, again, will that I think are pretty transformative. And I've recommended this book to a lot of people over the years, but it's really huge. So short titled, 9 Lies That Hold Your Business Back. Then the subtitles, and the truth that'll set you free. So there are things like, lie number 2, it takes money to make money. And it talks about the fact that people fall into the trap of spending money when they don't have it, and that's not really the way to think. Lie number 4, experience will benefit me. The thought that if I just had more experience and more experience and more experience, things will get easier and easier and easier. And that's not necessarily the truth. Or like lie number 5 is a big one. Lowering prices boosts business. Like just the thought that the more competitive your prices are, the lower your pricing is, the more business will come from it. There are actually different calculations, not in this book, but different calculations you can run where you can actually determine the return on raising prices and how many clients you can afford to lose with higher margins versus lowering your margins and how many clients you need to pick up to make up for that. There are different calculations you can run in business, which is all very good and interesting. But the basic principle about lowering prices and just being really competitive, it's not necessarily the way. We had one of our partners reach back out to us kind of in a panic saying, "Hey, we got a quote from someone in January, very, very, very competitive quote. They did for way less than we would ever do it. And we're kind of stepping in to help them out. But from January and that quote to today, they went bankrupt. So just the thought of being a vendor and being competitively priced doesn't mean you're not going to go bankrupt. You need margins, you need pricing. So check that book out as well. And then lastly, because I don't want to bore anyone, but these are all things that I think are huge. If you are, at a stage in your career where you feel like you're struggling to get over the hump, you're struggling to take things to the next level, and whether that's a few $100,000 in sales or size, or whether it's $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million or whatever it is, whether that's having one, your employee yourself, or having 5 employees or 10 employees, whatever the thing is where you feel like you're being held back and you're not getting to where you need to be. This book is really, it's again one that I've recommended, but it's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith. And the basic principle of this book is successful people, whether you can, let's be modest. Let's not say we're successful, but anyone who's seen any level of success will have leveraged certain traits, personality skills, certain things where you'll say, because I'm really direct, I became a great manager. Because I'm really good at schmoozing, I became a great salesperson. Because of some kind of personal trait, it got me to where I am. And you're like, yeah, and you built your career and you built your business and you're a success and life's great. And then you go, you know what I really want to do? I really want to take things to the next level. So the easiest way to explain this is think about like someone in a company, not an entrepreneur, but someone in a company. And you start out as a bank teller, and then you become, a personal banker, and then you become a branch manager. And then you go from being a branch manager to working in corporate, and then corporate to AVP, and then to VP. And before you know it, you're like an SVP over 20 years. And you're like, you know what? Everything that got me to being the SVP is my being a jerk or being direct or being hard on people or whatever it is. When you decide you want to become the president of the bank, or when you want to start your own business, everything that got you to where you are will actually hurt you and hold you back. There's a tipping point. There's a tipping point where you're on the ride up and you're literally getting as high as you will ever get based on your current skill sets and personalities. And you either need to change who you are or you're going to be going down. There's no way to use your innate natural skill sets to get you to where you want to be. And so this book, this principle is really interesting because it forces you to think just because you're successful by leveraging certain things doesn't mean that it's going to take you where you want to go. And so whether that's, you're a certain business size, or again, you're only 2 staff. How come I can only ever have 2 staff and everyone quits on me? Well, obviously your managing style got you to 2 staff and hold on to them. It's not going to get you to 5 or 8 or 10 or whatever it is. So, what got you here won't get you there. Marshall Goldsmith is a really great book for those who are really looking, they've seen some success, but they're really looking to get over the hump. So, sorry, Leah, that you're going to have to do so much editing on this podcast.
What? Why am I going to have to do so much editing?
Well, because, we just had a kind of an all over the place conversation. There's going to be a lot of books you're going to have to list. There's more stuff I wanted to talk about, but I don't want to bore you guys. I can talk about books that I like to read all day long and often do.
I love that Amazon.
You got to be on the mic.
Amazon has a reference so you can see how big the book is in your hands.
In case you're like, how big is this book?
Yeah, I need to know the appropriate size of book to buy.
And there are certain books where you're like, wow, that's a big book.
Well,
so make sure you check out that picture when you're looking
but hold
at
on,
these books.
but that's important though, because something like this
Why?
book, Best Practices Are Stupid by Stephen Shapiro, I thought was a great book. And then I spent a lot of money on this book, and you guys obviously on the podcast can't see, but it's about the size of a CD case. It is a tiny little book.
Yeah, it's like a Blu-ray case.
Yeah, it's that's perfect. Size of a Blu-ray case. It is 183 pages long, and it's just made up of little tips.
And
I got halfway through it, and I was just like,
so why did you think it was great?
Because I went to a conference where I heard him speak, and it is great principles, right? That best practices are stupid. 40 ways to out-innovate the competition. It talks about the fact that the idea of doing best practices the way everyone does is, in fact, he proves why best practices don't work. He proves why the best way to brainstorming actually doesn't work. He talks about how innovation doesn't work and the best way to actually approach innovation. Very, very interesting, good book. But tiny little thing. It's a wee little book, it's made for my son. Anyway, if you know what I would like to hear from all of our podcast listeners, tell us. Go ahead and tweet us, leave a comment on the page, leave a comment on YouTube, email us feedback@notsocorporatepodcast.com. I want to know your favorite book. I want to know the book that had the biggest influence on you. And you can go ahead and say, if there's something that really struck you, I don't know, people talking about The Wizard's Apprentice or something. That's cool. It could be any book. Business, non-business, the book that left the most lasting impression on you and why. Because I want to go ahead and get someone else to read it and then tell me about it in a podcast. So I'm going to email Ryan and say, Ryan, you got to check out these books too. And do the hard work for us. Listen, guys, thanks so much for joining me. I want to thank Ryan again, Caligiuri. If you would like to reach out to him again on Twitter @Ryan Caligiuri. And Leah, Kyle, thanks so much for joining us today and talking about books.
Thank you.
Especially the business books, Leah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll talk to you guys next time. Leah.
What?
Yeah.
Like the show notes.
Oh, you're a monster.